was fortunate this week to receive a gift from Jordan Hoggard, who's my usual partner in this enterprise, and he gave me this book, The Place of Creation, and in it, it has a remarkable story about creativity and why that's important. So let me begin by reading a passage of this, since I don't have many of my usual conversants with me here today. And so I'm just going to read on it. And what this passage talks about is the psyche and the reality planes. I'm reading from this, The Place of Creation. And so the dual aspect of reality, which as a unitary field represents both an energetic dynamic field and a field of something perceptibly and recognizably formed, is mirrored in the human psyche, which itself evolved during the extensive dialogue and settlement of boundaries with this unitary reality. Jung formulates the following, quote, "Man finds himself simultaneously driven to act and to reflect. This human duality of orientation corresponds to a duality of reality itself. Drives and the subjection to the power of drives are part of the dynamic numinosity of that which is real." Good morning, Kathy, and good morning, Penelope. Nice to see you here. This is a really important passage, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to read this. I'm going to repeat one part, and then I'm going to talk with you about why our confluence is significant this year. The dual aspect, and so I'll just reread the Jung quote here. Quote, "Man finds himself simultaneously driven to act and to reflect. This human duality of orientation corresponds to a duality of reality itself. Drives and the subjection to the power of drives are part of the dynamic numinosity of that which is real. This numinosity possesses a causal and effective force. The living creation is gripped by this numinosity without initially being able to apprehend or comprehend it. And that's the problem that we're still having today. Like earlier perceiving and reflecting stages of the living creation, human beings are, in contrast, are reflecting subjects relating to the luminosity of the life. Okay, so there's a distinction here made between numinosity and luminosity. And for example, to the characteristics of that which is real, in which the meaningfully knowable is closed and enclosed. Jung applied the term luminosity to particles of the unconscious mind, which possess the power to illuminate and which appear as sparks, fish's eyes, etc. This luminosity, which we have also characterized as the vector forward consciousness, is the unitary reality immanent tendency to make itself known. This is to say that content, meaning, luminosity, and form, as we must now add, are objective characteristics of reality and are not a product of the psyche in the sense of an interpretation. Like luminosity is not a quality of the psyche which is projected into the world, but rather it is one of the realities to which the psyche is related. This already arises from the fact that luminosity, as an anonymous field of knowledge, pertaining, for instance, to the instincts, antedates by far the evolution of consciousness as well. Conversely, it might appear rather as if a light quality of the conscious mind were a concentrate, so to speak, of the luminosity of reality. In similar manner, for instance, Gnostic mythology considers the collection and concentration of the dispersed light sparks of reality to be humanity's task. And what I want to mention here is that this sounds a lot like the ideas that might come up into your head, as you live your life. You have a luminous moment, and in that luminous moment, you get an idea, and this idea allows you to think of something new that you might do in your life, and then you manifest that by building, by being a creator, and of course, and let's see. Penelope asked a very good question, and I took my dust cover off for the purposes of this reading, but this is the book I'm reading, The Place of Creation by Eric Neumann. And Jordan Hoggard was kind enough to give this to me for Christmas, and it's a wonderful book. Unfortunately, it does not have paragraph numbers, but I started on page 35 of the book because it has some significance. And so I'm just reading it off. It may be hard to get a copy of this book, but it may be available in used books. And it's published by Princeton University Press. I'm going to look into an electronic copy of it in the coming week. And so I'm going to continue for now reading, and then I want to go back and talk about what we're doing this summer in Helena, Montana in June. Only in combination with each other do numinosity and luminosity constitute the paradoxical reality of the unitary field as a coincidentia oppositorium. In an interpretation in terms of energy and dynamics, therefore, necessarily relates only to one aspect of the unitary field, i.e., to its living movement and ultimately to quantitative factors. Even when these belong to different planes of reality, whether they be physical, chemical, biological, or psychological, it is impossible to grasp in the manner that component of the phenomena pertaining to form, spirit, and meaning, which can be experienced only in terms of quality. An orientation toward luminosity is therefore always concerned with content, and thus causes a quantitative and energetic view to fade into the background. Only a unity of these two mutually exclusive forms of observation can even approach doing justice to the complexity of the paradoxical reality to which it refers. It is a fundamental fact that the dynamic aspect and the aspect of form and meaning belong together. Life appears as an active force, which is to be seen not only as free energy, but also as incorporated in forms, and shapes that bind the energy into a body-like system. This occurs on all planes of reality. In the inorganic realm as ordered matter, in the organic realm as organized and centered being, and in the psychic realm as form that directs and confers meaning. On every plane, the moving force appears as an unknown numinosum, which allows things to happen to the inorganic level, which is urge and drive on the organic level, and which allows things to happen and is the drive that which takes action on the psychic level. Side by side with this dynamic energetic aspect, which is in certain sense the wave aspect of life, there is the aspect of form or being incorporated, which corresponds to the corpuscular aspect of life. The energetic sequence of occurrence, the energetic sequence, this is important sentence, so I'm going to read it a couple of times here. The energetic sequence of occurrence, urge, drive, and action represents the unreflected and unincorporated dynamism of life. So let me read it again. The energetic sequence of occurrence, urge, drive, and action represents the unreflected and unincorporated dynamism of life. Those branches of science which observe the dynamics of the process rather than the form and transformations of form are concerned with this aspect of reality. The consideration of that which we have all called the alternative character of events thus attains decisive importance, particularly for the field of psychology. The force and energy of dynamic depth psychology relates to this wave aspect of events. It speaks of these groups of concepts: repression, suppression, displacement, and transformation of energies, not of contents, of fascination, attraction, repulsion, and deep emotion. It passes from the psychology of libido and drives to the psychology of volition. It deals with concepts like intention, concentration, etc. Wherever human beings appear as driven and acting and not as reflecting, we are dealing with this dynamic aspect of the psychic realm. The heat manifestation of this psychic movement is the emotional element which occurs wherever free, unincorporated psychic energy occurs. As, for example, in processes of transformation in which nuclear structures, i.e., incorporated and systematized psychic formation, are completely or partially split, changed, or transformed. Observation of these energetic transformations is independent of the content and the meaning of occurrence. We thus speak of depression or elation, animation, or torpidity, regardless of whether the manifestations are an expression of transition within a process of transformations, or whether they must be considered to be made the result of the absorption of the energy of the conscious mind by the archetypal field with positive or negative content. This dynamic reality, which mainly appears within emotion, constitutes the numinous character of the world. Without going into the multiplicity of analogies between psychology and physics, it makes sense for us to say that the archetypes are psychic nuclear structures, which resemble the structures of atoms or the inherent organic structures known to us from genetics, which determine species and their behavior. Also, with respect to the archetype, we are correspondingly dealing with fields of energy, charges, combinations, and attractions with transformations of structure in the alchemical process, with the freeing and binding of psychic energy accompanying changes in the archetypal field, and with the bombardment of the conscious system, for instance, by energies related to in nuclear processes, etc. In alchemy, however, and in the process of change accompanying individuation, which corresponds to alchemy, we see that the happening takes place in forms or equally in corpuscles or in incorporated energies. And these forms, complexes, symbols, archetypes, etc., appear like psychic molecules or molecular combinations whose psychical chemistry, that is, alchemy, must be known or learned if one wants to understand what happens in the process. Now, I'm going to stop for a moment here because I want to just comment that Neumann is referring these matters to wave and particle as in light. Okay, so in physics, we know that we can observe light in two ways. We can observe it as a wave, and that is energy, or we can observe it as a particle, but we cannot observe it in both ways at once. You have to either observe light as a wave or a particle, but you cannot observe them both simultaneously, in both ways simultaneously. And that's basically what we're talking about. We're basically talking about Einstein's idea of E equals mc squared. In other words, energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. So what Neumann is talking about here is how do things get created? And I began this discussion with a discussion or a mention of the cathedral in Helena, Montana. And let me get a picture of that cathedral up on the screen so you can just see what it looks like. And so let's quickly. All right, what I ended up here is the Expedia entry on this topic. And so let me get that this up on the screen so that you can see what I'm talking about, because there's some nice pictures of it here. Okay, so this is the cathedral in Helena, Montana. Now, mind you, Helena, Montana was founded as a gold rush town in about the 1860s. And 50 years later, in 1912, was the completion of this cathedral. Now, the significance of this is that at some point, some bright Helena person had decided that there should be a cathedral. And let's see if I can get it bigger. Okay, so here it is. And then many creative people got involved in building this cathedral. And as you see, the cathedral is one of the major buildings in this city. And as it would be in any city. But Helena is a town of only about 30,000 people. And it's literally hundreds of miles from any other major town. And it's very near to Yellowstone National Park. And so the significance of this in my city, the city of Annapolis, Maryland, which is the capital of the state of Maryland, inside the city limits, there's 78,000 people, but we're within about 35 or 40 miles from the entire Washington, Baltimore, Annapolis region. So we have 3 major airports. We have more than 10 million people living in this region. And so all of them bring energy to Annapolis. But here, there was an energetic process that initially started with one person, and that energetic process resulted in this cathedral, which is just a remarkable, remarkable creation. And these stained glass windows in this cathedral were made before 1912 in Germany, and they had not been shipped when World War I began. And so they were maintained in storage by the creators of these stained glass windows through the whole 19 teens till the end of World War I. And then they were shipped to Helena. So as you see, this is just an amazing creative building. And obviously it's the creation of many, many artisans, of course. But that is a creation. So this energetic idea got spread. He took this idea, this energetic idea, and he gave this idea. It may have been a woman, who can say it was somebody who wanted a Catholic cathedral in this town, which it's only 30,000 people now, or something like 32,000 or something. So in the 1880s, it was basically a mining camp. And it was, someone said, well, we need a cathedral here, and here's the spot. And they started building. And traditionally, it takes 100 years to build a cathedral. And I don't think that Helena was even had even been settled for 100 years in 1912. So it's just a remarkable creation. And so let's see how we're doing. Okay, so anyway, I'm gonna read on, but the point is that this idea that came as luminosity in one person gathered the numinous emotion of enough craftsmen to create that building in the frontier of the United States, in what we would call the frontier of the United States. And it's just a remarkable accomplishment. So anyway, let me continue with this. So we were talking about the energetic sequence. So let me reread that sentence and carry on. The energetic sequence of a current, urge, drive, and action represents the unreflected and unincorporated dynamism of life. So somebody had an urge to have a cathedral, and there it is since 1912. Those branches of science which observe the dynamics of the process rather than the form and the transformation of form are concerned with this aspect of reality, the considerations of that which we have called the alternative character of events thus attains decisive importance, particularly for the field of psychology. The force and energy of dynamic depth psychology relates to this wave aspect of events. It speaks of these groups of concepts: repression, suppression, displacement, and transformation of energies, not of contents, or of fascination, attraction, repulsion, and deep emotion. It passes from the psychology of libido and drives to the psychology of volition. It deals with the concepts like intention, concentration, whereas human beings appear as driven and acting and not as reflecting. We are dealing with this dynamic aspect of the psychic realm. The heat manifestation of this psychic movement is the emotional element, which occurs wherever free, unincorporated psychic energy occurs. And so we could imagine in the settlement of Helena, Montana, there was a lot of free emotional energy present. And when the idea of this cathedral emerged, it immediately attracted so much psychic energy. As, for example, in the processes of transformation, in which nuclear structures incorporated in systematized psychic formations are completely or partially split, changed, or transformed. Observation of these energetic transformations is independent of the content and of the meaning of the occurrence. We thus speak of depression or elation, animation or torpidity, regardless of whether the manifestations are an expression of transition within a process of transformation, or whether they must be considered to be the result of the absorption of energy of the conscious mind by an archetypal field with positive or negative content. The dynamic reality, which mainly appears within emotion, constitutes the numinous characteristic of the world. And so, once again, as we show this remarkable building in Helena, Montana, and how did it get built? Well, it got built with the psychic energy of the people of Helena. More than 110 years ago it was completed. So it's the origin of that idea came from about maybe 150 years ago. And yet it was sufficient in this mining town, which was a gold mining town. And we can imagine how rough and ready it was at that time. It had sufficient energy to get this thing built at that point in time. It's just a remarkable accomplishment when you think about it. And obviously the idea itself was numinous to many people. All right. Reading on. Without going into the multiplicity of analogies between psychology and physics, it makes sense for us to say that the archetypes are psychic nuclear structures which resemble the structures of atoms or the inherent organic structures known to us from genetics, which determine species and their behavior. Also, with respect to the archetypes, we are correspondingly dealing with fields of energy, charges, combinations, and attractions with transformation of structure in the alchemical process. with the freeing and binding of psychic energy, accompanying changes in the archetypal field, and with the bombardment of the conscious system, for instance, by energies released in nuclear processes, etc. In alchemy, however, and in the process of change accompanying individuation, which corresponds to alchemy, we see that the happening takes place in forms, or equally in corpuscles or in incorporated energies, and that these forms, complexes, symbols, archetypes, etc., appear like psychic molecules or molecular combination whose psychical chemistry, that is alchemy, must be known or learned if one wants to understand what happens in the process. So the rationalists would certainly agree that this building, the Cathedral in Helena, Montana, is quite real. Okay, they would acknowledge that it's quite real, but they would not acknowledge where it came from. And because it came from this luminosity that was in one person's psyche initially, and that was in the form of an idea. And so that idea gained this form that now appears as this cathedral out in the middle of the Great Plains of the United States, or the Rocky Mountains. It's actually a mountainous area. And Happy New Year. I'm not sure what's going on here with people putting on 2 words and trying to advertise here on this site. I'm going to leave those things for the moment, but if you continue to do that sort of thing, you're going to find yourself out on the street very quickly. All right, now reading on, because this comes to a summation, which I think corresponds to what we're doing in Helena next summer. Probably every depth psychologist has suffered from the fact that we use concepts from chemistry and physics in our terminology, even though their appropriateness seems doubtful, since they appear to be only analogies. But the analogy obviously does not signify an unjustified transfer from one field to another field alien to it. It is rather an expression of the unity of the world field, and of the fact that the polarized structure of our conscious mind demands analogous concepts in all areas of application. Jung outlined the structural formula for the psychic process of transformation as an analogy to the chemical formula for the first time in Ion. This is an expression of the fundamental recognition of the genuinely unitary nature of the world field, and of the analogy corresponding to it in concept formation, with which both the physical and the psychic realm must be comprehended. Observation of the energetic dynamic wave aspect in the psychic realm stands side by side with the observation which focuses on the corpuscular aspect. In this aspect, the form is understood as an incorporation of energy in which the incorporated energy becomes manifest. Okay, so that's what my reference to the cathedral is. This observation of the unitary field and the archetypal field leads from the presentation of images, from conception and perception of corporeal, as well as psychic forms, to the elaboration of their meaning, first through extraneous knowledge, and finally through the conscious mind. The corpuscular form aspects refers to the luminous character of reality as the basis of cognition. These 2 aspects, in which the unitary field is seen at times as dynamic, energetic happening, and at other times as manifesting reality, are not merely aspects of the conscious mind, as mentioned before, but are also components of what reality, whose existence caused the psyche and the conscious mind to form in the first place. For this reason, there are psychic reactions whenever transitions between these two components of reality occur, i.e., when free energy becomes form and incorporates itself, and conversely, when incorporated form dissolves and becomes free energy. Okay, now this is the paragraph that I thought refers to our confluence. The nature of creativity in the extra-human as well as in the human realm is always the incorporation, that is, the turning into form of what until then had been just formless dynamic energy. The liberating element of creativity for the psyche consists in transforming unformed dynamic energies, which create unrest as drive, urge, or emotion, into that form which possesses a direction toward consciousness. For within this form, a vector is urging the comprehension of its inherent luminosity, and thus, finally, the increased comprehension of meaning. And so, I want to stop there for a minute because we're actually experiencing this, and that is what caused us to create this confluence for next summer. So I want to urge upon you this website, which explains the idea in detail for this year. And that's where we're going to present it and help manifest it. But the reality is that this confluence has been occurring for several months now. It had its origins in a meeting that Tim Holmes and I had on May the 7th, 2021. I had unfortunately received a diagnosis of prostate cancer last February, and I've now been through all my radiation treatments for that. So I guess I'm retread for about another 15 or 20 years, 10 or 15 years, maybe 20. And so that seems fine to me because of my current age. But in any case, I had this diagnosis, which is, of course, quite a real thing when you realize you've been diagnosed with this. And what happened was that the very, very first thing, the very, very first idea that came into my mind when the doctor was on the telephone giving me this news, this diagnosis, was that I should have my portrait painted. And oh, by the way, it so happens that I know a world famous artist in the form of Tim Holmes, and he lives in Helena, Montana. I should get him to paint my portrait as a legacy for my children. And so I called Tim up, and over the next 2 months, the idea of doing this portrait came to mind, and we agreed that we would do it on May the 7th, that we would at least I would sit for this portrait live on May the 7th. And that's one rule that I would make, which is if somebody's going to paint your portrait, never allow them to do it only from a photograph. You have to convey the essence of yourself to the artist. And So Tim was saying, well, we don't have to do this right now. And I said, no, we have to do this right now because I'm going to be in radiation therapy and I don't know what I'm going to look like when I finish it, because Edward Edinger, who died at approximately my age or a little older, looked like a cadaver by the time he died. And he had bladder cancer, and ultimately it killed him at age 76. And so I said, let's do the portrait now. And so Tim agreed, and I flew from Baltimore to Helena on the 6th of May, 2021. And we spent one day together, Tim and I did. And then on the 7th was the day. And then on the 8th, very early in the morning, I left and came back to Baltimore. And it was an incredible numinous experience for me to be in Tim's studio for that one day and 2 nights. I spent 2 nights in his studio. And there was so much art around that there were many numinous things that were going on in my psyche during that 2-night period, especially. And so all the way back from Helena on the 8th of May last year, something was going on. Some idea was ruminating, but it hadn't come to my conscious mind. And Tim has a picture that he's painted over a number of years of his muse holding a blindfold over his head, over his eyes, and making him paint. And she's holding it, but she's got her knee in his back, and he's reaching his brush out for the canvas. And I felt that exact feeling going from Helena back to Baltimore, that something was pushing me, and I didn't know what. And so on the next morning, which was the 9th of May, it was a Sunday morning, I sent a text to Tim suggesting that we organize the Confluence that we're going to do in June. And Tim responded, and over a period of about half an hour, we just had this text messaging going back and forth. It was like 2 molecules going zip, 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 zip. And in that 30-minute period, we envisioned what we're going to do in June, as a matter of fact. And we didn't know all of the aspects of it, but we already knew the outline of it in that 30-minute period. And Kathy asked, what a deeply moving experience in your process is that your portrait done and yours. Yes, it certainly is done. And we have had a lot of fun with it in the advanced reading group over this year. I suppose I should, since we're talking about it, I guess we better pull it up so that people can see the portrait that Tim created over the next 6 weeks. I got it in about mid-June, and it was very, very numinous in too many ways to count. And see if I have the portrait. Yes, I do. Okay, here it is. And I didn't give Tim any direction. I told him complete artistic freedom. I want to see what you come up with. And I didn't want to put any of my personas on it. In other words, any of my masks. I didn't want those present. And I can put on my Marine Corps uniform, or the dress of an Arab, or my business suit, and be any number of different personas. But I wanted Tim to have complete artistic freedom without being bound by a persona. And in order to achieve that, I actually posed for Tim's drawing class nude, and you can see that. There's a video on this website called Skip Sans Persona, without persona, and I literally posed nude so that I would have there would be nothing but myself present with Tim. And so here's the resulting portrait. This is Skip poses the question, and that's the name of this. Skip poses the question, and it's Skip as a Jungian scholar. Okay, that's the essence of what Tim's idea was. And we actually had a 2-hour session with the advanced reading group, in which we came up with all of the Jungian references, all the references to Carl Jung that exist in this portrait. And we found over 120. And that may seem impossible, but nonetheless, that's what we did. And if you're in the advanced reading group, I'll be happy to point you to the video of that. But in any case, just to give you some examples, Tim had put a very unusual thing in this portrait, and he said he had the portrait in his studio for about a month, and no one had seen this, and yet it was so obvious. And this is oil. This is oil on canvas, is what the mediums are. And so does anyone see the remarkable aspect of this portrait? And if you see it, I'll give you 15 seconds now before I tell you what it is, to put it onto the YouTube chat, so that see if you can guess what it is. But there's something that no one saw it in Tim's studio before he shipped me this portrait. And when we opened the portrait, Debbie and I, we saw it instantly. I saw it instantly. And it's just a remarkable fact. So I guess nobody's seen it because there's nobody that's saying what it is. But the answer is, I have 5 fingers in this portrait. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of course, my thumb is not showing. And so, so what does that mean? Well, and so in Jungian terms, it means I'm pointing to the unconscious. And so as you see, my actual hand is here, but there's another finger, and this is sort of separated from the 4 physical fingers, and that's a finger that's pointing to the unconscious. So it's separated, it's darker, and it's pointing to my mala of skulls, which I was carrying with me to Helena to show him. So there you see my mala of skulls, and on my other wrist, you see my Uroboros bracelet that my wife gave me. And then in the grip of my right hand, or first of all, in my right hand, I'm again pointing to the unconscious, which is here. And there are many things in this unconscious area. But in this grip, there's actually somebody swimming. You see the head here and the finger or the arm of a swimmer in dark water. And that's a reference to the fact that Dr. Jung had spoken to James Joyce about his daughter who was schizophrenic. And Dr. Jung explained to Joyce that his daughter was drowning in the same swimming pool in which James Joyce could swim. And so he was, James Joyce always worked from the unconscious, and that's what his whole body of work relates to. And particularly Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake, whereas his daughter was non-compos mentis. She was schizophrenic at the time, and I don't think there were good treatments for schizophrenia at that point in time. So anyway, that's the portrait. And so you can find a part of the process, so a video part of it, about an hour and a half worth of my nude posing session on this website, or this YouTube channel, and it's called Skepson's Persona. So anyway, but the point is that I had an energetic experience in terms of wanting to have a portrait. But I also, so I gave that idea, that one piece of luminosity to Tim, and he manifested it. And that's how he manifested it. And so that was, by analogy, the wave and the form. And, very honestly, when I first looked at it, I did see the fifth finger, but I didn't, my first reaction to this portrait was that I didn't really care for it. And I had asked him to put me with a pleasant countenance, because this would be something that my children would have in future times. And what he did, I'm not grinning or smiling or chuckling as I often do, and but what he did was he did a very amazing thing, and I didn't. What my first reaction was not to like it, but again, I'm going to comment on it here, because he did a couple of things. One is he gave me a Mona Lisa smile. And so you can't tell whether I'm smiling or frowning here. And he did one other thing, which I had asked him to do. And that was, I wanted him to refer to me looking inwardly. And there's a very famous painting of Jesus Christ, in which Jesus Christ is, with one eye is looking at you, and with his other eye is looking inwardly. And it's actually the very first, it's the very first image of Jesus Christ that is known to exist, and it was found in the Sinai at the Cathedral of St. Catherine, I think, which is in the Sinai Desert. And this painting, which was done around 400 AD or so, has Jesus looking at you, but with his other eye, he's looking inwardly. And so here you can see that with my right eye, I'm looking directly at you. And of course, that's the rationale, the rational side. And with my left eye, I'm looking inwardly at my processes that are going on in my psyche. And so that's the same idea, the idea of the look of Sinai Jesus. But anyway, it was something I explicitly asked Tim to include because I wanted to have within this portrait the idea that I looked into my unconscious. Yes, Kathy, it's definitely an incredible portrait. And so anyway, Tim and I have now a pact that I will ask him to do my portrait once a year, so that we can see a progression over years of how he sees me. And of course, in this particular portrait, I do not have a mustache. And so this year, I'll be coming to Helena to perform in a play about Carl Jung, and I will be playing Jung. And so I'm growing this mustache as part of my role in the play. And I had the idea that we would perform this play let's say a couple of months into the process of developing the Confluence. And my colleagues concurred with it. So we're actually having a rehearsal of a part of the play today at 5 p.m. my time, but 2 p.m. California time, because the play is called The Analyst and the Rabbi. And the other major part in the play is a rabbi, a very famous rabbi. Right after the Second World War, this confrontation occurred between the rabbi and the analyst. And it's quite a moving play. I've been working with it for months now. And it's going to be quite an important experience, which may be at the Renewal Theater in Helena, Montana, on the 12th of June of this year, 2022. And so we hope you'll be there. And if you're interested in being there, please go to the website that I've put on the YouTube chat here and sign up. We do have several that have signed up and registered to attend. We're going to limit the attendance. There are about 10 of us that are putting this program on total, and we're doing a documentary about it as well. So there are about 10 of us that are involved in that process. And so we are only allowing 30 people to attend. And so if you wish to attend, please express your interest soon, because we're going to, once we have 30 people committed, there won't be any others, and it's a participation by invitation only. And what we are hoping that will happen is that this confluence idea that we've had, and you can't really appreciate it, I know, as I'm talking about it, because it's a rational thing to talk about something. And in the beginning was the word, that sort of thing. But if you come to the confluence, you will grok it. You will understand what we're saying. And when you do, we hope that you'll take it back to your own community and do similar things in your own community. And we think it's quite possible to do. And, for my lights, I feel that we have basically shot ourselves in the foot by running the arts out of public schools. And I largely think that artists cannot explain this well. They don't really understand what it is. And so it's, what I personally have observed. We have a wonderful facility here in Annapolis, which is called Maryland Hall for the Creative Arts. And we had a wonderful opportunity when segregation was not allowed anymore, where both whites and blacks had to be housed in the same high school. The city of Annapolis built a new high school that would house everybody. And there were two buildings. One was for the white children and one was for the black children that were surplus. And the result of that was that the high school, which is a magnificent old Victorian high school that the white children had been in, was given to the arts. And so the result of that is that the classrooms have been divided up. So there's a classroom for portraits, there's a classroom for general painting, there's a classroom for etching and printing. And we also house in that building an opera company, a symphony orchestra, a chorale, a ballet company. And these are quite remarkable institutions, each one of them. For example, the ballet has as its teachers 3 prima ballerinas who have escaped from China and now become American citizens. And they were prima ballerinas in China, and now they are teaching young children who are interested in the ballet here in Annapolis. And we also have, I think, 6 artists in residence in that building. And, obviously there's storage for the arts and so on. So there's so many things that go on there, including a full season of a symphony orchestra that has its own conductor, conductor who's growing in fame around the United States. And they do just remarkable things. They have a full season, just like the Kennedy Center. The National Symphony Orchestra has a season of performances. So does the Annapolis Symphony. And it has remarkable musicians who come from the Peabody School of Music here in Baltimore, among others. I mean, there are many professional museums or musicians who also perform in the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra. So it's quite an incredible thing. But going back to the confluence then, but even before that. So my reaction to the artist, because I did take some painting classes and drawing classes there, particularly. Besides enjoying the performances of these artistic people in the arts, I was very disappointed, actually, in one aspect of it. I took a pastel painting class, and we were doing portraiture. And one time I was, trying to do a portrait of a young man, actually. And the teacher came up behind me and she said, you can't do it that way. You have to do it this way. And I looked at her and I said, no, I don't. I mean, that's the essence. That's the essence of the fallacy that many art teachers have, which is that you're trying to teach someone to replicate a camera. We have cameras for that now, so we don't need necessarily a portrait artist that can replicate a camera. What we need is a portrait artist who can replicate an idea and express a real emotional connection to the subject. So, for example, here in Tim's portrait, if you look at it, you have to admit that it's not a camera representation of me per se, but it certainly evokes a likeness. And at the same time, it definitely does replicate the emotional connection between me and Tim. Sorry. A lot of talking. Okay. So, I think at this point, because I've been talking for an hour and a half, I'm going to stop this reading. Let me just see. All right, well, let me read a little bit more, but then I'm going to go back and just talk about the confluence. So, I'll read the paragraph again that I think relates to our confluence, and then I'll read another couple of pages here. And I'm reading from this book, The Place of Creation by Erich Neumann. Neumann was known as sort of Jung's best student. I'm on page 41. The nature of creativity in the extra-human, as well as in the human realm, is always the incorporation, that is, the turning into form of what until then had been just formless dynamic energy. The liberating element of creativity for the psyche consists in transforming unformed dynamic energies, which create unrest as drive, urge, or emotion into that form, which possesses a direction toward consciousness. For within this form, a vector is urging the comprehension of the inherent luminosity, and thus finally, the increased comprehension of meaning. So in the last half hour, I've been discussing how the emotional energy, the drive and urge originated in me for the confluence, and how has started to manifest in numerous ways. One of the ways is with the portrait that I have shown you. And so now I'll just read on a little bit more. Whenever formless forces thus become form, as they do, for instance, in the formulation of images from unconscious processes, the effect is liberating and furthermore transforming. This therapeutic effect, which constitutes one of the ritual foundations of all art, that is, art as the symbolic formation of archetypes, is familiar to us. We know it from the creative modeling of children and from the effects of fantasy and active imagination of healthy as well as sick people. We need only to hint at the freeing effects of the higher form of cognition in the processes of bringing of consciousness and realization, unconscious contents, which include as well those contents which are effective, though not recognized. The capacity of the conscious mind to construct synthesis, which is the shaping of a higher and more encompassing form, also represents form-giving incorporation. The world of our conscious mind is therefore a world of symbol and form. The abstracting thinking function is no exception in this, and even the world of science is a symbol and form world of higher order. The effect of energies being freed as well as being bound reaches far beyond the psychic realm of the person affected, even if we disregard parapsychological effects. This is especially true when nuclear processes occurring in the archetypal field are concerned. Every analyst knows the depressing and endangering as well as the freeing and redeeming effect of the archetypal within a group of persons who are closely related psychically. Jung pointed out a long time ago that raising 1% of one parent to consciousness, Jung pointed out a long time ago that raising one parent to consciousness can dissolve a child's neurosis and vice versa. Changes within the partner and within the entire family situation as an unsought effect of an analytical process or a process of change in just one member are strikingly frequent. This is also true for a more extensive group, for a nation, and so forth. The incorporation of free energies as transpersonal forms is the work of culture, which creates a form world via religion, art, and cognition, and whose collapse then floods humanity with the most horrible consequences of formless energies, as it is demonstrated in all periods when cultural forms are broken up. This is to say, according to the principle of incorporation, dynamic effects, and not only those restricted to the individual psychic realm, increases in direct ratio to the breaking up of forms and decrease as forms are shaped and reinforced. And so the point that we see here in our country and with the effect of the January 6th insurrection, we had a president who was very serious in breaking up forms throughout his 4 years of tenure. And so the result of that was that we had this insurrection, which caused quite a number of people to attack a sacred building and who were prepared to commit murder, and in fact did commit murder, and caused the death of numerous people. And that literally is the breaking up of forms. We've now seen it in the physical world, and we see how terrible it is and can be. And so it's our responsibility as conscious individuals to improve on our forms in such a way that a majority of the country can come together and turn our back on that kind of chaos, because it would take a long time for that chaotic approach to produce another United States of America. So we have to work with improving the country we have rather than destroying it and starting over. We'll be back at the Stone Age before too long if we allow that process to continue, of destruction of the forms that we've created as a nation over the last 200 and almost 50 years. So that's the point. And we know that the ancient Romans failed to do that. They had a form. Their form was manifest in the power of Rome for 1,000 years, but ultimately that form broke up, and they didn't have enough consciousness to be able to recover the form that they had created. And so the result is that modern Italians live in the ruins of the form that was created in Rome and in other places. I mean, we see the same phenomenon going on in throughout the world. And so if we now go back and look at the cathedral in Helena, and look at this city, how sparse it is behind the cathedral, and it's very much the same behind the cameraman. And so somehow this idea of creating a cathedral in the middle of a mining town that began in the 19th century and was built by 1912, and it was finally finished in 1926 or something like that, when the stained glass windows were finally recovered from Germany and delivered to Helena. I think they had actually been paid for long before, but this cathedral is a monument to the manifestation of these unconscious processes, and you can imagine that if someone started to tear down that process, then it would never appear. It would have never appeared. But the people of Helena had kept a vision going for decades that created that building, and so now I'll just talk a little bit more about our Confluence, because to be honest, as we've gone forward in this, we're all artists in our own way, the six of us who are involved in the Confluence. And I'll just share with you now again. The actual website that we've created for this. And there's 6 of us involved in this now. But we want to reimagine the future. And so here Tim is giving a great video description of what it is we're doing. But then there's 6 of us who are variously experienced, who are committed to manifesting what we're talking about. And what we realized in the process that we've been involved in for now nearly 6 months, that we are already in the confluence. We are in the role of manifesting what our vision is. And so these are 6 incredible, well, I'll excuse myself from being an incredible individual, but the others certainly are. Dr. John Jackson is a psychiatrist, but he's also a poet, and he has done quite a few artistic things with us. And Sherry Lovler here is also a poet. And so John and Sherry are going to talk about poetry. And last Christmas, I gave all my friends and family that I could think of a copy of Sherry's book of poetry, which I find the most evocative poetry I've ever experienced. I can't read her book without becoming emotional. So she's definitely reaching very deep parts of my unconscious simply by her words. And so we're going to talk about that. But Colleen Kibert is a sculpture artist who has worked in Aptos, California, near Santa Cruz for the last 50 years. And she has a tremendous following of people who have learned ceramic portraiture from her. Tim Holmes, of course, and Bob Manus has been a psychologist for the last 45 years, but he was the founder of the Jung Society of Washington, one of the founders. And Bob is going to talk about the psychological aspects of the story of Sleeping Beauty, and which he did his PhD thesis on. And Colleen is then going to do a demonstration of the manifestation of your unconscious to the confluence. And John and Sherry are going to perform with me in our play that we're doing on the 12th of June. And Tim is serving as the director and producer of the play. And I will be playing the role of C.G. Jung. And also I'm making creative contributions to what it is that we're going to present. But what we realized as a group, we got together on the weekend of November 4th, and we hashed out together. We had been working on it for some months while the others waited for me to get through my radiation therapy and my hip replacement. We had been meeting on Zoom, but we decided to get together physically at Colleen's house in California on that weekend. And we can honestly all say that that itself was a numinous experience. And instead of what we realized is that we're in an energetic process, and that the confluence actually began with my cancer diagnosis back in February. But, from that moment, where some energetic thing was going on, we began at that point to manifest something. We didn't know what. And so by November, 8 months later, we have manifested a plan for what we're actually going to present to you on the weekend that we're doing this, June 10th to 14th, 2022, in Helena, Montana. And so it's going to be, and so we realized from that weekend together in November that we're actually already in this energetic field that is going to manifest something new, a new way of thinking about art, and why we have sort of cut off our noses to spite our faces, because we've read creative activity out of our public schools, at least, and the artists no longer know what it is that they're actually doing, which is the essence of it is to understand that the energy that produces art, that produces a manifestation, is essential to having a creative country and to having a creative world and to create solutions to our problems. And so if we teach people how to be creators, then instead of just cogs in the machine, I mean, the people who are rationalists say, oh, no, forget it, forget all that. If you can't prove it in a physical manifestation, then it doesn't exist. Well, it does exist, and it exists in an energetic form long before it's manifested. So, that's the lesson of the Cathedral of Helena, which is that, you just can't, you can't create something like the Cathedral of Helena without having a lot of psychic energy that is working in wave form long before that building comes to manifestation. And so I urge you to come and join us. And so let's go through some of the other aspects of this, of what it is we're doing. And so going back now, here's the Cathedral of Helena in the middle of a valley between the Rocky Mountains. And it's at the Continental Divide. It's Helena is literally within a 20-minute drive of the Continental Divide, which is symbolically very significant, obviously. And so I urge you to listen to this video that Tim created. And these are the people, but let's see here. We need to, so here we are. Here's a picture of us in Aptos, California at our meeting. And, and this is where we were putting together our ideas. And you can see here, Tim is actually doing an art class for some of Colleen's students. And this is a photograph of the gallery at Tim's Helena studio. He has this building that is 7,000 square feet and used to be a home for wayward women. And so here's one of Tim's creative pieces. And what is hard to see in this particular picture, but you can see elsewhere is this is the creative inspiration manifesting from matter, okay, because everything comes from matter. And so here, the legs of this individual are actually chained to matter, and this is symbolic of the development of creativity. And so this is the front of Tim's studio, which is, as I said, it's a 7,000 square foot building, so it's quite large, and that's going to be the main locality of the Confluence, although the play is going to be at a playhouse in Helena. And these are the 6 of us at our Aptos meeting, putting the thing together. And again, a picture of Tim's studio. And this is sort of the essence of what we're talking about, which is that we're entering the Aquarian age. And so it's a time for humanity to wake up and to gain some wisdom. And so what this sculpture represents of Tim's is wisdom, Sophia, as she appears in the Bible, and the feminine manifestation of God, pouring water down to we human beings. So this is what is represented by the Aquarian age, and the pouring of wisdom down to humanity, where we can put it to good use. And so that's where we're doing it. Another image of Tim's studio with detailed biographies of the individuals who are involved, so that you can see who we are. And where is it's going to be a Tim Holmes studio. One of the things that we're going to do is actually on Friday, the 10th of June, we're going to actually visit these dolmens, which are very much like Stonehenge. And these appear in the mountains of Montana above Helena. Tim tells me that this formation is about 53 feet high. And then we're also there's also the availability of a Yellowstone Park tour and a tour into the gates of the mountains where the Lewis and Clark expedition went. And once again, there's the cathedral in Helena. And then, this is how you register. And so we urge you, there's going to be a limited space, only 30 participants outside of we ourselves. And so we hope you'll attend so that you'll have the full experience. What I can promise you is, and I've been to Helena twice now since my diagnosis, is that you will have a numinous experience for sure on this weekend, and you will come out of it renewed. And so, that's my personal guarantee. If you come to this and you don't have such an experience, I would be really shocked. And so we want to demonstrate it so that we can then have a good argument for how we have to change the way arts are presented in the world. And they're an essential part of the human being, and the creativity is an essential part of a human being. It's actually half of what we have to do. It's E equals MC squared. And so I've, in a number of ways, described this during this session. And so so the point is, I'm trying to make the analogy as Neumann did in this reading that I gave you earlier today, that from formless dynamic energy, which is in the form of psychic energy, we create form. And so the rationalists who say, if you can't touch it, it's not real, they only have half the story. And it's actually the lesser half because it's actually the energetic formulation before it becomes manifest that makes it possible for anything to appear on the planet. To build a new home. Some people, are blessed to have the money to build a new home, and they create it exactly as they want it, with the same, granite counters or whatever it is, whatever the fad is for today. And that's a creative activity, but it comes from psychic energy, which is produced long before. I mean, a woman who gets the kitchen of her dreams has been dreaming that dream for her whole lifetime, probably. And it's only manifest when you get to build your dream home. And so, even a marriage is that, where, love at first sight is psychic energy, which it becomes manifest in children, let's say, at some point in the future. And but that psychic energy is definitely there, and it's very exciting. While it's psychic energy, the idea of being together with this person that you've fallen in love with, and that's great during the honeymoon. That's the honeymoon is where you only have this psychic energy going, and it's only the two of you. But then what? Then you get into the hard work of manifesting what this coupling, this marriage means to the world, what that conjunctio means to the world. And so from the unconscious manifestation of energy, of love at first sight, comes the hard work of building a marriage and building this relationship that you can maintain for your whole life. And it has to be a shared experience, obviously. And so you manifest that in your own marriage, and that's then manifested in children, and if you're lucky, grandchildren, of which I have 10 now, and I'm proud of every one of them. And so those 10 grandchildren are a manifestation of the love at first sight that was shared by my first wife and me before we were married. And so we didn't have the benefit of this kind of teaching in our marriage and before our marriage. And so we didn't understand the creative manifestation aspect of marriage in the right way. And so the result of that was that we broke up finally. And my second wife and I did have that, or we learned it, let's say we learned it together, how to manifest a loving marriage with one another. And so we've been together now for 35 years. And we know what it means now. We know what it means. And it seems to me that if we're going to reduce the number of broken marriages that we have in the country and in the world, then we have to teach people this creative aspect and to understand the energies involved and to understand that you can't always be on this high of falling in love, or you can't always be on the high that produces a one-night stand. You eventually, you have to choose, and you have to manifest what it means to be fully human, not just the energy, but also what's the cathedral that you're creating together with your spouse that's going to last into the future. And my wife and I have done that in a unique way. We've created something where that supports both of us, and in many ways we cannot describe it, but it's not important for you to know. It's only important for us to know what that is. And it manifests in myriad ways in our lives, in the physical world, but most of it passes in the energetic world, believe it or not. And so that, that's again one of these things where we have to learn our creativity and bring it into our lives. So I've been talking nonstop for 2 hours. I'm going to say again, I'm going to put again the link for our Confluence. And just to mention that of the 30 seats that we have available for our, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. This is the correct, let me do it again. It's confluence22.org. That's the correct connection. And so that is the website. And let me give you one other thing here. If I can find it quickly enough. This is the sign up for our various programs on this YouTube channel. And, honestly, when I began this YouTube channel, I did not know what it would be. And I started to interact with people. And in various ways, it has connected with people around the world. Literally hundreds of people do link to this channel and to find things that they can't find other places in the universe of the YouTube. And now it's manifested in over 1,200 videos on this YouTube channel, which is beyond anyone. I don't think anybody can go back and look at all the videos that we've created over the last 6 years. But that literally, again, is a manifestation of a psychologically energetic process that began with just the urge to get some people to pay attention to the work of Carl Jung. That was the original motivation. And it still is the primary motivation of this YouTube channel, because I think we'll have a happier world if we do pay attention to what he and people like Eric Neumann have said already. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can stand on their shoulders and advance things further. I mean, that's the beauty. Earlier in this broadcast, I was reading from this book, The Place of Creation by Eric Neumann. And Eric Neumann was C.G. Jung's best student, as he's known today. But the beauty of what he did, and there's actually 3 volumes. This is the 3rd volume of this series. The others, let's see if I have them. The others are The Art and the Creative Unconscious, which was volume 1, and volume 2 is Creative Man, 5 Essays. And then this is volume 3, The Place of Creation. These are all basic essays by Eric Neumann, but he obviously stood on Carl Jung's shoulders and took it further. And that's what our purpose is here. One of our purposes. I know when I was with my father in the last 6 hours of his life, let's say, I said to him at one point, you know that we stand on your shoulders every day. And, that's a fact. Certainly, I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors. And actually, one of my cousins found a terrific manifestation of this recently. I think I can share it with you because it's quite remarkable. If I can find this picture. Let's see here. Well, maybe not, but not in time, so you don't have to wait for it. But I'll share this with you. This is a photograph of my grandparents with their 9 grandchildren that I'll share with you. And obviously we stand on their shoulders every day. And so I don't know if you can figure out which one of these is me, but this is my grandparents at our ancestral home in Casanova, New York. And this tall guy here is me. And this is my brother Sam, who I lost in 1988. Somewhere here, I guess here she is my sister. These are my cousins. And the youngest one here, this one that's sitting on my grandmother's lap, is now a judge in Northern New York and has been for about 20 years. So anyway, it's just a little aside for general fun and information. And so I will say goodbye to you and have a great week. We will be back with our usual Monday night session tomorrow. And so if you are not on our list to receive the notices of our various sessions, I've given you the MailChimp connection where you can register, and you will receive a notice with the correct link to join us tomorrow night, and also for the links of our other events, which we do throughout the week and throughout the year. So thank you for joining.